Militarily Speaking, Season 2, Episode 3, Mount Carmel Veterans Service Center.
This episode, we talk with Joe Reagan with Mount Carmel Veterans Service Center.
Welcome to Militarily Speaking, brought to you by Armed Forces Bank. This is Tom McLean and Jodi Vickery. I am the
Meathead.
I'm the retail. Yeah, I'm the military retail executive for.
We are so not editing that out.
And let's keep it in there. And Jodi used to be the chief digital officer. Now she's the chief digital officer. So
the CDO.
Joe, when you think of chief digital officer, what do you?
Why do you have to ask every guest this?
You've been in the banking world, right?
I mean, on the periphery, I think your chief digital officer is probably the one that is, taking marketing to the next level of really bringing it back and finding those new mediums to connect with your consumers.
You're breaking up. Wait, could you repeat that?
I'll have to tell Jess, our chief marketing officer. I've been trying to get on her team. I've been showing her that I'm very good at creative graphics.
Joe just boosted you up like thousands of feet.
I know. Did you see me? I sat up straighter.
Walking on cloud nine.
Yeah, I feel pretty good about myself. So thanks, Joe. I like you already.
That'll change.
Yeah. No. Give it time. Yeah. Again, welcome to our show. We're excited to have you listening and learning about our guest, Joe Reagan. We do want to take just a second and tell our audience a little bit about you. Joe is the director of the Colorado Veterans Business Outreach Center, or VBOC. He joined the Colorado VBOC after 20 plus years of experience leading change in teams across the defense, technology, and nonprofit sectors. After leaving active duty in the United States Army, thank you for your service, Joe.
Yes,
of course.
Joe earned an MBA from the University of Virginia. His experience spans multiple industries, ranging from healthcare to technology, national security, and nonprofit work. Prior to joining the Colorado VBOC, Joe was the president of New Space Global. He has also worked for a number of nonprofit organizations supporting the military and veteran community, including Easter Seals and Wreaths Across America, which is a friend of ours as well. Well, welcome, Joe. It's an honor to have you on our show. I'm excited to learn about you and your organization. For those in our audience that might not be aware, just give us kind of that bird's eye view of what Mount Carmel Veterans Business Center is all about.
Of course. Well, Mount Carmel was founded just a little bit over 10 years ago with the goal of being a one-stop shop for veterans, transitioning service members, and their families in the Pikes Peak region. And that has expanded over the course of the past 10 years to cover most of southern Colorado. And about 3 years ago, Mount Carmel picked up the Veteran Business Outreach, or the VBOC, contract with the Small Business Administration. So now we provide services to those same people that are looking at starting a small business. And so it's really an amazing organization where our goal is, too often in government, in nonprofit space, we have our little lanes in the road. And when someone shows up to our door and maybe we don't do that service, we just say, well, sorry, we can't help you. And then that door closes. And Mount Carmel was really designed to be through partnerships. That no wrong door philosophy was anyone that comes through our door, regardless of what they need, that we're going to provide them with the services and resources to help them thrive.
I love that no wrong door philosophy.
I know.
There'll be a lot of application for that.
If it said Jodi Vickery on the outside of the door,
do not enter.
Do not enter.
Beware.
Check how she's doing today and then see if it's
Has
okay
she had
to
coffee?
enter at your own risk.
Yeah. What cup is she on?
You and I met, Joe, and certainly our prep work for the summit that we had in Colorado Springs, which is in your backyard. And when you say Pikes Peak, I'm sure our audience gets jealous because it's such a beautiful landscape out there. And certainly we can't talk about the Colorado Rockies, and you can't talk about the Broncos around Kansas City. So we can't bring that up either. So
we'll stick away from sports, I guess.
Yes. But I knew you had a lot of passion for what you do. I knew you were very knowledgeable in what you do. You have a great background, great experience, but walk us through a little bit from a career standpoint. Jodi brought your bio to life, but talk about how you ended up being at Mount Carmel.
Right. Well, I think it's a lifelong calling to serve. And that started when I was in college. I went to a private military school, and I had the full intention of not going into the military after the fact. That the advantage of going to a private school or private military school is that there was no military service obligation. But after 9/11, I really felt that calling, that going into the military was the way to go. And I was one of those. I had an opportunity. I could have done anything I wanted to do in the military. And I chose to go infantry, which is kind of the, frontline troops. and wanted to go with the 10th Mountain Division, which at the time was the highest deployed unit in the United States Army. And so within what was a little bit over a year from graduation, I had graduated college, done all of my initial training, and found myself on a plane over to Afghanistan, where I was able to lead some amazing men and women in combat over the course of a 16-month deployment. And then after that one, I came back, did a second tour as well. It was more of a staff role for that one. Did a few other kind of interesting strategic roles within the military, and then I got out at about the 8-year mark and continued to serve. And I kind of found myself in a place professionally where I was learning a lot and engaging with private business, but it was not rewarding. And I was sitting on the board of directors for a local nonprofit. It's kind of a volunteer when our director left, and the board had asked, well, would you be interested in taking on this role full time? And I thought about it. I said, I think that is something I'd like to do. And so was able to find that reward, find that giving back, and was able to go from that route. And so really for the past 10 years, have spent my time in a number of different nonprofits being able to serve my fellow veterans in a variety of different capacities. And that's where I found myself in the VBOC. We're now able to help those fellow service members, their spouses, veterans that want to start a small business. And so we're seeing that impact not only in their own lives, but seeing that impact in their communities as well.
I love that. That's such a good thing for, I think, veterans, and even particularly for military spouses, to have sort of that entrepreneurial spirit. It's portable. They can take it with them as they're moving about the country, for sure. Kind of along those lines, what are some of the most common things that you see prospective small business starters or owners coming to Mount Carmel for? And are they more heavily weighted in certain industries or certain types of businesses, or does it really run the full gamut?
Well, let me answer the second question first, because I think that one's kind of funny, where really there is no industry focus. And so oftentimes many of our clients are in the ideation phase of their business. They're coming to us with a concept, and we're helping them refine that. And just as an example, about a month and a half ago, I was teaching a class on Fort Carson, which is one of the major military installations here in Colorado. And in the front row, I had a service member and his spouse who ran a small business where they were crocheting dolls that resembled characters from horror movies.
Oh, gosh. Wouldn't see that one coming.
Nope.
No, it was, and again, this very narrow focus, very narrow customers.
We'll call it a niche. Niche.
It was a niche. In the back of the room, though, there was a military doctor that was getting ready to retire, and she wanted to use 3D printing technology for what could best be described as internal prosthetics. So, for example, using a 3D printer to maybe print a rib bone or something that you're going to put inside the body. And that's in one classroom, to give you an example of the scope and spectrum of
so we'll say diverse.
Very diverse.
Yes.
But the problems that come to us are very similar. And like I said, we are in the ideation phase of small business development. So many of these folks have never run a business before. Many of them are just leaving the military. And so they don't really understand even the basics of how do you build a business plan? What is accounting? How do I structure myself? And some legal questions. And so the two biggest questions that we generally have is, how am I going to pay for this? And then how am I supposed to structure myself? Should I be an LLC, a sole proprietorship? A lot of people are interested in getting in the nonprofit space. So we provide them with that kind of overview as to, like, here are the different resources that are available. And as a program of the Small Business Administration, oftentimes we're talking a lot about small business programs, 8A programs, and some of those different loan programs. But we tend to tie in with them with different lenders at the same time, because oftentimes you have commercial lenders that have products that are a better fit than what the SBA has to offer. And so what we'll do is we will then coach those clients to help refine that business model, build out a financial forecast, so that when they go and have a conversation with the bank, all of those hard conversations have already been had. Because, like, and Tom, when you and I were talking, and I've talked to a number of folks in the lending space, they all say the same thing. A business owner will show up, and oftentimes they don't have a business plan. They don't really have all those forecasts that you're going to need to see in order to make a decision as to whether or not this individual qualifies for a loan. And so by coaching them ahead of time, we're able to make that first conversation go that much more smoothly. And that's, I think, invaluable not only for the client, the veteran, but also the bank that has to make that decision and ultimately put that risk up to support that new business.
Yeah, I think that's great. They've got an idea and you're helping them put legs underneath of it.
Or as I like to say, when they walk into our office, they're going to come in with a good idea, and they're going to walk out with a good idea and about 24 questions they never thought to ask themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Can we go back to the crochet dolls for a second? Because my daughter, I'll tell you, my daughter does all this crochet, does fruits, vegetables. Now she can add, I guess, horror figures to a repertoire. But did that ever materialize into something?
Yeah. And so when they came to us, they'd actually been selling in a couple of different venues. And one of the biggest questions that they had was they were having a really difficult time with financial forecasting because their margins shifted depending on where they're selling. They were selling online, and that had a certain set cost that came with it. Then they would sell at like farmers markets. They would go to like Comic-Con and sell there. And that was making financial forecasting that much difficult. And so we kind of helped coach them on the fact that, well, hey, you should probably think of each of these different venues
or events or calendars or time of year.
Treat that as a unique sales channel. And that way you can build out that revenue, figure out where your highest profitability is. And then you can make that determination of, well, do I really want to go to Comic-Con? If it's going to cost me $1,000 to rent a space, am I going to be able to recoup that? Same thing with the farmers market. What are my sales going to look like there, and what's the cost? And giving them the tools so that they were then able to identify those fixed and variable costs associated with each of the different platforms where they were selling.
Makes total sense.
It makes me want to still talk about this.
I know. You're going to Google it after we're done, aren't you?
He didn't tell me he was going to bring this up, so now it's got me off my game. And then, as Jodi mentioned, as far as people walking in the door and seeking guidance, assistance when they have a great idea, are you seeing a lot of startups come to the front door? Or are you seeing veteran-owned businesses that have been there for 10 years and maybe they're at an inflection point or at a point in their business life where they want to refocus or change direction?
Yeah, I would say the majority of folks that are coming to us are in that early phase. These are mostly startups, many of which are pre-revenue. And so we are working with them to get them to that point of doors open. When you look at the pathway for a business owner and then the different resources that exist outside of just the veteran space. So VBOC is one tool among many that exist in our community and in communities across the country that are designed to help these small businesses thrive. And so part of the program, in addition to training, is also resource navigation. So if a company comes to us and they're a little bit more mature and maybe they're having a specific issue with marketing, then what we might try and do, instead of necessarily doing all that work in-house, connect them with a resource in the community that already exists. So think of SCORE mentors or your small business development centers. These are tools that are available to any business owner, but are able to specialize more in those things and are focused more on the developed businesses. When we deal with folks that are getting into government contracting, we have programs like the Apex Accelerator, and these are tools that are designed to help support that growth into government contracting. So that's part of that resource navigation of saying, hey, you are a veteran business owner, and that qualifies you for certain components. But at the same time, you need to be tied into the bigger and broader business community, because that's where you're going to find a lot of these different resources to help you thrive as a small business owner.
And you kind of touched on it with that answer. Are there other programs and resources that you bring to the table that we haven't hit on just in our other conversations? Or I think just as importantly, how do people access those? Is there a website that we should direct them to? How do they connect with you to understand what the options are for them?
Yeah. So obviously we're talking today about my role at the Colorado VBOC, but there are 31 VBOCs nationwide. So wherever you are, you have those resources available to you. So every community covers down. Obviously, some of these VBOCs are covering down on multiple states, but we do a lot of counseling and trainings that are available online. In fact, about 2 weeks ago, we partnered with the Big Sky VBOC, which covers down on Montana, Idaho, and I think Nevada or Utah, and did a specific training for farming and ranching, because in the West, that's a big deal for. So we were able to partner with some of the other VBOCs to provide that training virtually to folks across the Western region. Other resources that would be available, as I said, you have the Small Business Development Center, you have SCORE. The Small Business Administration has a number of tools that are available, like the Women's Business Center. And we also have the certifications that are available. So you can get your 8A designation, your veteran-owned small business, disabled-owned small business designation, and we'll help clients navigate that process as well. One of the things that I find in my role, and it's funny, Tom, we were talking about how I'm from the Pikes Peak region, which is in Central Colorado on the Front Range, but I'm actually talking to you today from the western slope of Colorado because I was out in Durango for the Western Slope Small Business or Startup Week.
That all just sounds very cool. I'm on the western
is.
slope. I'm in Durango.
And there's also every season is in Colorado
I'm in
one
downtown
day.
Kansas
You know,
City.
I think just today alone, as I was driving through some of these passes, I hit snow and the beautiful foliage of the aspens, and then got back down into 70 degrees in some of the valleys.
And here we sit in a concrete jungle.
But that's the same thing that communities face, right? So a lot of these resources and tools are going to vary based on the community that you live in, the region that you live in, and so for us, understanding what is out there for that. So along the Front Range of Colorado, we have a number of different resources. On the western slope, a much different set of resources, and there's not as many of them. So when we run into rural communities, how do we provide different levels of support to those business owners that might not see what you would see in a more urban or developed area?
Joe, how do you think being part of a veteran service organization, or a VSO, if we're going to throw out acronyms, how does that help you deliver better outcomes for your clients? I think just having the veteran connection is magical in and of itself, but what does that designation or what does that affiliation mean?
Yeah. So cultural competency, and you all know this from your work on installations when it comes to banking specific to our service members. Having that cultural competency allows us to speak the language of our clients, and more importantly, help them translate that. And when I'm teaching some of these classes, I'll get up and I'll say, I'm not teaching you new skills. I'm teaching you how to translate those skills into a different language, right? You're speaking military right now. I need you to speak finance. And so I assure you, these are the same tools that you've been using for decades in military planning and military decision making. But now I just need you to speak a different language so that everyone else in the room understands what you're talking about. But being with a veteran service organization, let me tell you a short story that might highlight this, because I think that's usually the best way to do it. We had a veteran that came in and was very interested in starting a small business. And like any good conversation, we start with, how are you? Tell us about yourself. And the response we get back was, oh, I'm doing great. I just got divorced. I'm getting evicted next month. And I haven't had a job in 2 years. And so being able to then address that, be like, okay, maybe starting a small business right now isn't the best thing for you. Instead, why don't we walk you down the hall where we have behavioral health services, where we have family services that can help connect you with the resources so we get stability. Let's get you into a permanent housing situation so we don't run into homelessness. Let's connect you with some job training resources so we can get you a sustainable source of income and revenue. And that might be getting a job. That might be in getting your disability approved. And once we get you to a point where you're stable and thriving, let's come back to this idea. And I think that illustrates this idea of when we are focused on the outcome, we're able to address all of those needs, whether it's someone like me that's more of a business guy. And I'll tell you another story too. And this is one of those examples of, we had a client that called interested in services. And as the conversation progressed, one of my team members identified that this individual was actually suicidal. And while on the call, was able to connect them directly with those resources to de-escalate the situation and bring them back to a point where now this person sees hope in the future and now is able to move forward and connect them with mental health resources so that they can move beyond that crisis point. And now they're still in our community thriving. And again, connect them with those external resources, get them to a point where they're stable. And then when it's time, let's come back to the business idea afterwards. So just two examples of how, when we are connected as a veteran service organization, regardless of what that veteran is going through or what that military spouse or military family member is going through at that time, we're able to bring all those additional resources from the periphery to bear and focus on that individual and what's going to allow them to thrive in the moment and in the future.
You always think about startups and the success and failure rates, right, of startups, whether you're civilian, military spouse, or just have an idea. The numbers are pretty staggering about failures in the first 12 or 18 months. And sometimes just taking a pause and maybe getting them on the right track, then the success rates go up. That like to your point, Joe, better outcomes from that. You don't set them up to fail by doing something just because you want to take the order from someone that thinks they know what they're doing.
Exactly.
Give them the guidance, give them the resources, give them the support, get them on the right track. But know that as a VSO, you'll be there for them when the time's right. But you've got access to all those resources because you've walked in their footsteps, walked in their boots, and understand what's available out there, especially in the Colorado Springs area. With all the veterans that live in that community, there's so much support out there.
There is. And one of the things that I think has made our community successful in that sense is the ability to...
As a military spouse, I understand how unpredictable life can be. Whether it's a PCS move or just everyday expenses, money can be tight. That's why it's so important to have a checking account that works for you.
Armed Forces Bank offers our Access Freedom checking accounts designed with military families in mind. If you're looking for no monthly fees, early military pay, and no fee access to over 38,000 ATMs nationwide, we've got you covered. Plus, with our user-friendly mobile app, managing your money is a breeze, no matter where you're stationed.
And with about 75% of our team affiliated with the military, Armed Forces Bank really understands the challenges faced by the military and their families. We've been supporting military families for over 100 years, so you know we'll always have your back.
If you're ready for a checking account that's as flexible as you are, head over to afbank.com or visit a branch near you. Armed Forces Bank, serving those who serve. Member FDIC, $25 opening deposit and e-statements required. Direct deposit required for early military pay. Closing new accounts within 90 days of opening will result in a $25 early closure fee. Message and data rates charged by your mobile phone carrier may apply.
One of the things that I think has made our community successful in that sense is the ability to collaborate instead of compete. And I think this is an issue that we run into with a lot of nonprofits, is oftentimes these are all organizations with very valuable missions that are competing for financial resources. And when we partner on the programming side, we provide ourselves with those opportunities to get those better outcomes. And I think in the Pikes Peak region, in the state of Colorado, we have done a good job of identifying those different resources, pulling them together, and creating an ecosystem where we can collaborate for client outcomes while still getting out there and making sure that we're engaging with those other community partners like lenders that are going to be able to financially support these organizations to allow us to provide those services.
Yeah, I love that. And it's kind of right where we wanted to head next with this conversation. So including the collaboration that you're talking about there in your local Pikes Peak area, how do you reach out and collaborate with I think you said there were 31 total VBOCs across the country. How do you share ideas? What ideas have you learned from them, gleaned from them? What ideas have you shared and kind of proliferated across the country? How does that partnership work?
But Joe, before you answer that, you're directly tied with the SBA, right?
That's correct.
Is there anything with the state of the affairs today with government shutdown? Does that impair or impede your ability to help, or is it a waiting game for you? How does that change your day? And then answer Jodi's question.
Yeah, I would say that the current situation with the government does not necessarily impede our day-to-day operations because of that we are a grant-funded program, and so that funding has already been allocated for us for at least the next 6 months. So day-to-day, we are still able to provide that function. Where we will see delays, obviously, if we're having to go to SBA for certain tools, then obviously our SBA colleagues are not in the office currently. So we've got the knowledge of the tools that are out there. And so in some cases, it might be a delay in connecting someone with the different resources to get that approval for their small business designation or getting the hub zone designation. So those things might be on hold until we get back everyone gets back into the office. But for the most part, the counseling, the trainings, all of those have continued and will continue until there's unless this shutdown continues for more than the next 3 or 4 months. Hopefully that doesn't happen.
We hope not.
Yeah. Don't say that out loud. Yeah.
So to the question around how do we collaborate with the other VBOCs, it might sound simple, but we have a monthly meeting where all of the directors get together and simply share best practices. We talk about new tools that are available. The SBA comes down and will tell us anything that's new. So for example, just a few months ago, the SBA rolled out a new initiative focused on manufacturing initiatives. So how do we then take that information, communicate it down to our folks? All of us right now are very engaged with the planning for Veteran Small Business Week, which is coming up it's the first full week of November. So those are areas where we've got a formal mechanism where we'll get together on a regular basis, discuss best practices, interact with each other. But when you think about it, 31 centers nationwide is not a large number. So many of us have known each other or get to know each other over the course of just business. And so we're able to pick up the phone and just say, hey, what do you think? And go back to my example about our work with the Big Sky VBOC, saying, hey, we know that you guys have this class. I don't need to replicate that. Can we just jump on it and promote it to our clients? And that way they were able to benefit from it as well. And then I talk to other VBOCs and say, hey, the state of Colorado, we have a big outdoor industry. Would it be helpful if maybe we start to try and pull in some folks from our tourism industry, from our outdoor industry, and maybe we can design a class that's around that? Everyone's like, yeah, that'd be great. And so that's kind of one of those longer term initiatives that we've looked at of what is unique, what skill sets does Colorado have that is unique to us that might be able to benefit other parts of the country as well.
This next question, Joe, was not done by me because you had to tell me what the question would be because I wasn't smart enough to come up with it. So here we go. Ready?
I'm impressed that you actually admitted that.
Oh, did I say that? I said that out loud, didn't I?
And we're still recording. Yeah.
So
normally he'd totally take credit for it.
That's a great question.
That's a great question, Tom.
What role does the VBOC play in strengthening the local economy? I thought that was great. And then how do you interact with the rest of the entrepreneurial ecosystem? That's probably why I couldn't come up with that question.
That's how I know you didn't come up with that question.
Yeah. And then track the impact of small businesses you've helped. So that's Jodi's favorite part is to do 3-part questions like that. And so tackle that one that you have advance warning.
Yeah. So the first part of that question, what are we doing? How is our work impacting the rest of these communities? So obviously, small business is a driver of our economy. Whether you live in a big city or a small town, a small business is the driving force in our economy. Here in the state of Colorado, I can tell you that veteran-owned small business contributes over $22 billion to Colorado's economy annually. If you were to compile that and make veteran-owned small business its own industry, it would be the 5th largest industry in the state of Colorado.
Wow.
So that at a big level, that is a large number that can tell you the impact that this is having when veteran-owned small businesses in general thrive. We measure the impact of that by looking at things like, and a lot of these are self-reported metrics. So when a client comes to us and says, hey, I just hired my first person, we'll put that and track that sort of information so that we know how many jobs have been created based on these small business openings. We'll also work with them, like as I mentioned, one of the bigger questions that we have around lending, we'll also work both with the client as well as our lending partners to get a sense of what has this done for your loan pipeline. So it gives us an idea of how much money is being inserted into the economy through these new business development. And I would say in the first 6 months of the year, the Colorado VBOC, I think it was just one lender alone, contributed over $12 million to their loan pipeline. So we're able to really build out that portfolio. And if you're a lender, when you're getting a client from us, we're saving you time, because instead of you having to go back and having the initial conversation and saying, before we have a further follow-on conversation, I need this, and this, I've already got it. And so when a client comes to me, I'm saying, before you go to the bank, here, you need to have this information and show up with it. That way it's a more efficient conversation for you and for the client. It's less frustrating for them. And so those are some of the areas, some of the major areas that we would keep the metrics on what that looks like.
By the way, I think you put a good plug in for the 31 VBOCs around the country for banks to come knock on the doors to set up shop and try to be a partner with the VBOC.
Yep. Well, and this is, I'll take a pause from answering the 3-part question and go back to a question you already asked. But, this is part of that, when we talk about no wrong door, our banking partners are one of those doors that someone walks in. It's an opportunity for you as a community staple to ask that question of your clients, of the people that you're serving. Ask them, have you served in the military? And that's where, if you have a partner like Mount Carmel in your community, if you have a VBOC, you can then say, hey, did you know that this resource exists for veterans of the community? If you're a veteran small business owner, have you spoken to the local VBOC? And so I encourage anybody that's interacting with the public to ask that question. If you have an intake document, if you're bringing new clients on, ask them, have you ever served in the military? And if they say yes, then you can connect them with those resources that you're available, that you know of, and make that connection. And that is something that I advocate, not just for bankers, but at all levels, for people to be asking that question, so that we can, because this is and now I'll pivot back to the third part of the question, which is, how do I interact with the broader economic development ecosystem? And one of the questions they ask is for data. And it actually is kind of difficult to identify how many veteran-owned small businesses are out there, because unless they self-identify, there's not really a database, right? If you get the small business designation through SBA, you really only need to do that if you're going to get involved with government contracting at some level. So many businesses might advertise the fact that they're veteran-owned, but they don't actually put it anywhere. There's no database. And that's where tracking down those numbers can sometimes become a little bit more challenging, or figuring out, how do we contact these folks? Because, like, as I said, when we're getting ready for Veteran Small Business Week, one of the things that I want to do is highlight those veteran businesses. So how do I find them? Some of them I know, some of them I don't. And I think that it's always beneficial. We can find those businesses that are doing amazing things that don't necessarily get their story told. Because I think sometimes, especially in the nonprofit space, we might find a client, we're like, oh, they've got a great story, and we stick to that one. But there's so many other great stories that are out there you just kind of stumble across sometimes. And those are the ones that you really want to be able to elevate and highlight the fact that this is a great program.
Yes.
And so through partnership is then where we engage with those other tools at both the local level, the state level. So obviously, like I said, our partnerships at the federal level are through the Small Business Administration. But in the state of Colorado, we have a state level office for economic development and international trade. So we work very closely with them. And then, I've only been in this role now for about 8 months. And so I've focused a lot of my early time to get into these different communities to identify what other resources are out there, and at least make that introduction, so that when we have a client in a different area, we can say, hey, have you talked to this person yet? Or vice versa. Someone walks into a local chamber of commerce and says, hey, have you talked to the VBOC yet? They can help you with this. You know that, right? So it is a lot of work sometimes to get out there and engage with the community, but that's what, building that network of strong partners, both inside the veteran space and outside the veteran space, is really what drives success.
I would never have guessed that you've only been doing this 8 months, because you've got passion for it.
I thought he meant
knowledgeable
years,
about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
He's a pro.
It's awesome. Yeah. What kind of things are you seeing, or would you cause businesses to think about as emerging trends in small business? I mean, we've talked recently about some different things here, and how AI can impact that, or, whatever the hot topic is du jour, I suppose. But what kind of emerging trends are you encouraging small businesses to think about when they bring that idea to you?
Well, we started the conversation talking about the diversity of industries that we deal with at the VBOC. And so it is really hard to identify one particular trend, or even a number of trends, that would be applicable to all of them. But I do think that when it comes to AI, that is a tool that every business owner needs to be using. And so when we talk about AI, in fact, just yesterday, I sat through an hour-long seminar about how you can utilize AI for doing reputation management, which is something that most businesses, it takes them years to get to a point of maturity where they're starting to deal with reputation management. But AI can be used to monitor various social media channels, all the review channels, to identify when a negative review comes in, and either cue you to say, hey, you need to deal with this. Or in some cases, you can even generate a response through AI that will be kind of that placeholder of, hey, thanks for the comment. We'll get back to you on that because we want to address this immediately. So we have a lot of conversations around AI and what that's going to do to the marketplace. But I think every business owner has to be looking at it as a tool that can increase efficiency, especially when it comes to marketing. So for years, right, SEO was the term du jour.
Right.
Everyone needs to get SEO, and now we're getting into a space where we need to get beyond that, and this needs to be, you need your website to be AI focused, so that when the AI bot is scraping through the internet, it finds your website and can answer someone's question. And that's a different way of doing website design. So it's, in fact, just this fall, we've hosted a series of classes of how a small business owner should be dealing with a web designer, and how they should be laying out their storyboards. So when they're doing the web interface, that website is optimized not only for AI search, but also for the user experience as well, and simplifying that. So I would say those are probably two trends of, how do you communicate what your business is doing is probably the biggest one that we have, because that's changing. And I think, how do you do it in a way that builds trust? because I think there's one of the emerging trends we don't talk about enough is the fact that with all of this information, trusted sources are few and far between these days. And so how do you create that authentic response that someone is going to feel confident that the information they're getting from you is in fact accurate?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it sounds like you're giving them tools too. So a topic like AI that might be intimidating for somebody that doesn't know is something that's actionable.
So I've got one final question for you.
Mm-hmm.
It's a zinger. What's the one piece of advice you wish every small business owner would know?
Planning. Really think through the planning. And I'll say this from the perspective of a combat leader, right? In combat, everyone knows, right? The plan falls apart the moment of first contact with the enemy. In small business, it's the same thing. The moment you open those doors, your plan is almost certainly going to fall apart. But the act of going through and doing the plan and really thinking through all of the assumptions. And I tell people a lot of times, I said, listen, I got a new joke the other day. This was a good one.
Oh,
right?
no. Oh, no. We haven't done a joke in a long time.
This is right up my alley. You could be bringing me back to life.
This is a good one. And it's a clean one too. So this is good, right?
Even better.
So 3 people apply for a mathematician, a statistician, and an economist. All apply for a job. And so the mathematician goes in first. And they ask the mathematician, what's 2 plus 2? And the mathematician says, 4. You sure? Yep. He goes, okay. And the statistician goes in. They say, what's 2 plus 2? And he says, 4. He says, are you sure? He says, well, I'm 97% certain with a degree of error of about 1%. Okay. Then the economist goes in. They say, what's 2 plus 2? And he goes over, locks the door, lowers the shades, and says, what do you want it to be? Which is funny, of course, because when you really think through how we're doing financial forecasting, right, all of that is based on a number of different assumptions. And we can oftentimes make those numbers look really, really good on paper. And that might be beneficial in some cases. But as a business owner, you really have to understand what those assumptions you're making about how you're going to get to profitability. And so when you're doing that detailed business plan, when you're really digging into all those assumptions in your financial forecasting, don't just look at the numbers, but understand the assumptions that you've made to get to that point. And that's part of your business planning process. It's part of your market research process. Because like I said, you can make those numbers look really, really rosy, but until you really understand where those assumptions are coming from and where that creates vulnerability and risk, that is the value of doing the planning. And that's where you need to create a lot of effort.
It's a great answer. I think that joke may illustrate how I did in college in economics class. I didn't have that understanding. I don't.
Somebody famous said a good plan violently executed now is better than a perfect plan next week. Is that advice you might give to a startup? Because to your point about military and every plan that you're going to put out there, it might fail. But it's okay to get something out there and learn from it. Or would you say, like you said earlier in our podcast, take a breath and don't do something until we get you in the right place?
It's that mix, right? So yes, you'll never have the perfect plan, and you don't want to get yourself into a position where you're indecisive. At some point, you need to be making decisions. You have to do it with a certain tolerance for risk, where you might not have all of the answers that you want to make that decision. But to take advantage of opportunities that exist, sometimes you have to make those balanced risk decisions, in the moment. So I think, like I said, for anybody, it is a balance that you certainly have to make, but one that should always be made with an eye towards risk mitigation and management.
Yeah, good point.
So I don't know that we've asked yet, and if we haven't, our apologies.
Begin anyway if we did it.
It's a good thing to say twice. Is there a website in that local area where you would direct people to figure out how to reach you, how to contact you, and how to take advantage of some of these resources we've talked about today?
Absolutely. So if you are in the state of Colorado, you can go to the mountcarmelcenter.org/VBOC. If you Google VBOC or Veteran Business Outreach Center, you will be brought to the Small Business Administration webpage, where you can find the contact information for all 31 centers nationwide.
Excellent. Wanted to make sure we got that in. as an important fact before we played the military minute.
Forget it's been there 8 months.
I know.
I'll give him at least a B+.
I think, yeah.
I'll take it.
Yeah. I think it's time.
Let's play a game.
We're going to play the military minute. So we have 2 trivia questions today for you, Joe. One, the first, and it would be super weird if you knew the answer to this. I'm just going to go out on a limb and say that. So last week's military minute, because we had a veteran-owned small business owner on talking, was about that topic. According to and so you can answer this one, Moose, if you know. According to the SBA's Office of Advocacy, how many veteran-owned businesses are there in the United States in 2024?
Would that be as in like, no, actually, no. No.
If you're in our audience and you are excellent at Google and you answered
1.6 million.
Yeah. So if you're in our audience and you guessed 1.6 million after our last podcast, watch for your name to be selected as the lucky winner for $50 for you and $50 to a charity of your choice. And so I think you might actually know this week's military minute, but you can't answer because this one's going to be teed up for our audience. So I'm going to ask you to nod your head if you know the answer. So, but don't tell them. This week's military minute is a question about VBOCs. In what year did the Veterans Business Outreach Center get created? Thumbs up if you know, but don't say it out loud.
No.
We won't even rat you out.
That was
our audience.
That was a yes. Yeah.
He's only been there 8 months, right? So that comes in month 9 of training.
He knows more about the Pikes Peak.
Yes.
Yeah.
So if you're in our audience and you know the answer to what year did the Veterans Business Outreach Center get created, or you can Google it by the time this podcast drops, put your best answer in the comments. And if you're right, you too could be the lucky recipient of $50 for you and $50 to a charity of your choice.
Joe Reagan, I applaud you. If you enjoyed today's episode as much as Jodi did, go out to afbank.com, subscribe to the show. Also, make sure to rate us, leave us a comment on your favorite podcast platform, Apple, Spotify, YouTube.
Well done, Joe.
Thank you. No, that was lovely.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Copyright Armed Forces Bank, member FDIC, equal housing lender. All non-Armed Forces Bank-owned apps, websites, company names, and product names are trademarks or registered trademarks of their respective owners. Their mention does not imply any affiliation with or endorsement by Armed Forces Bank of them or their products and services. They are merely used as examples of the many available apps, companies, and websites that offer similar services. Before using any app or website, you should carefully review the terms of use, data collection, and privacy policy. Apps may have an initial cost or in-application purchase features. This information is general in nature and is not intended to be legal, tax, or financial advice. Although Armed Forces Bank believes this information to be accurate, it cannot ensure that it could change. Statements or opinions of individuals referenced herein are their own, not Armed Forces Bank. Consult an appropriate professional concerning your specific situation and respective governing bodies for applicable laws, such as irs.gov for current tax law. Armed Forces Bank, the Armed Forces Bank logo, and the Militarily Speaking logo are registered trademarks of Armed Forces Bank.